Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Just want you to start with taking a deep breath in and exhale. Consider the times where you've been overwhelmed, perhaps feeling unwell, right? Not feeling yourself, maybe frustrated, perhaps sad or melancholy about something. Who do you reach out to? Who do you talk to about how you're feeling? How do you vent? How do you unwind? Yeah, think of the name of that person or those people or those activities that you do. And express your gratitude for having those in your life. That you have an outlet, somewhere, someone, something that helps you get back to your best self. Take another deep breath. Exhale. Welcome to Time to Come Alive. My name is Valerie Hope, and I am your host. I know you've seen me twice this week for those of you who are watching live. And that's because I can't wait to share more people with you. There's amazing people out there doing amazing things. And in just a moment, I will introduce my special guest. But before then, if you are watching this live, please feel free to share this on your timeline and social media. For those of you watching the recording, share this with other people. As you listen to our conversation today, you might find you know exactly the right person that needs this message. And if that's the case, please do not hesitate to share that with them. You can also subscribe on www.timetocomealive.com so that you get these recordings right in your inbox. So you don't want to miss a thing. So I encourage you to do that. Now, I want to introduce my wonderful guest to you, Dr. Robyn Alley-Hay. Hey! Robyn and I met, oh my goodness, Robyn, how long has it been? Let's see, I think we met like 5 years ago, 5 or
I
6
think
years.
so. Yeah.
Woo. Yes, and we met, I think we were just volunteering at
Yep.
a professional leadership course that Landmark Worldwide hosts. And
Right.
since then, we just kind of connected. I remember you and I went to lunch or dinner once at a Thai restaurant
Oh,
because
yeah.
we just wanted to talk.
We do get pretty talkative, don't we?
No, but I thought you were just a phenomenal listener. You clearly care about people. I love some of the work you're doing, and I know you're going to talk about that in a second. So what we know so far about you is that you're a doctor, your specialty, OBGYN, but what else do you want us to know about you?
Well, first, before I start that, I just want to say, Valerie, to me, you are somebody that embodies coming alive, and your energy is so wonderful. And your greatness and leading other people to their greatness. And when I say greatness, I don't mean like, ego greatness. I mean like knowing who you are in the world and making a difference for people. So, and your personality is just really, alive and warm. So I just wanted to acknowledge you before I talk about myself.
I appreciate that. Thank you
You
very
asked me
much.
why I wanted to do this, and part of it's because I love my friend Valerie.
Yay! I love
Hey.
you too, and I'm so happy that you're getting your message out
Yeah,
there because I think what you're going to share in just a moment will have an impact on many people.
I hope
So
so.
now everybody on their edge of their seat. What is
I
she
know.
doing? So
Well,
first of all, before we get into the nitty gritty,
okay,
just tell us who you are, where you come
sure.
from, a little bit about your background, Robyn.
Well, I am an OBGYN, and I need everybody to know that I'm not doing clinical medicine anymore. I've reinvented myself in my life several times, but I found coaching at a really low point in my life after divorce, after changing jobs. And, I've been to a therapist, but coaching was like, oh, wait, I can do this. I can take on these tools and kind of figure myself out, and in community figure myself out. So the healing has been incredible for me and has led me to all kinds of different places. So so that's why I took on coaching.
Well, so you said you're not a clinician anymore, so you're not practicing. So don't call her and say, "Hey,
Yeah,
I have
don't.
this." No, that's not what she's here for. But I'm curious, what made you decide to transition? Why did you stop practicing
Well,
in a clinic?
you know, that I always loved what I did with my patients. And, I tried to keep as few patients as possible, spend time with them. And so much of the healing that was taking place was me sitting there listening, like committed listening, and somebody feeling like they were really heard, like sometimes for the first time. And also when you're an OBGYN, people can tell you all kinds of, you know, personal stuff. And, they trusted me to do that. So yeah, really passionate about women's health and about babies being born healthy.
Yeah.
So,
But you decided to leave practicing medicine for what reason?
well, I found it so helpful, and I love coaching. I was telling you this the other day. I'm like, oh my God, I love coaching. I just love coaching. I just really think so many people, it changes and transforms their life. So that's why I left. And also, I know everybody knows this about medicine right now, but there's a lot to practicing successfully and in a balance. And I'm just so really committed to being there for like my sisters in medicine, through the coaching. And I think it's something that you can take to your medical practice as well. Wherever you are, you can take some of the tools.
Yeah. So let me just to make it really clear for people, your passion for not only medicine, really, for your passion for healthy women, right, and happy babies, as you like to say, that born into loving relationships or loving environment. Your commitment is to help other people who are practicing medicine create the same for their patients and for their communities. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So this coaching that you're doing, what exactly? Because I know when you and I chatted before the show, I was asking you about like, why do physicians need coaching? And you said something that was very insightful that I never thought about.
Oh, shoot.
Ooh. Okay, wait. Hang on. Let it go. I want to know what the song. What is the ringtone?
Rainbow by Casey Musgraves.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Well, if I'm going to be bothered with somebody calling me a call that I don't even know this person, I want it to be like a nice sound rather than that, annoying, interrupt your day kind of thing. So I apologize for that.
No, totally fine. And this is interesting off the side comment there, but I'm exactly the opposite. I like a normal ringtone, like a regular old school phone ringtone, but my alarm, I can't stand that. It's like, it has to be music. I've been waking up to music since I was in the 5th grade, and my uncle gave me a tape recorder clock thing that I could set music to. Changed my life. So I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember what I have my alarm set to, but something probably by Casey Musgraves.
Okay, Casey is the person.
Yeah. Another ringtone that's my favorite is Mustang Sally. So,
there you go. You want to dance. People probably get to voicemail all the time because you don't want to answer it. You just want to listen to the song.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you have to be happy about interruptions.
I love it. All right, so let's come back to what we're talking about in regards to supporting physicians. You told me yesterday that there were some things around the kind of care, the type of emotional development that physicians sometimes struggle with. So talk to us a little bit about that, because I thought that was a really interesting perspective.
Well, I think we were talking about, if you think about a physician, you have medical school after you graduate from college. So that's 4 years, and it's very competitive and it's very Socratic, which, there's only one right answer. And then you go on to a residency or perhaps a fellowship on top of the residency. So residencies are about 4 years, 5 years, depending on what you go into. So by the time you come out, most of us might have a baby in there, or not, or just starting a family, but you're already, in your late 20s, about 30 sometimes. before you're like done with your training. So that's, there's not time, when you're busy doing all that. It's always, I'll live for tomorrow. I'll live for tomorrow. It'll be better tomorrow. It's always putting your life off to the future, which is a survival mechanism. Yeah. But, we're wanting to change the conversation in medicine, which is another thing, to a more, treat residents in training better, give them more opportunities. There's a lot that doctors take on, as far as secondary trauma, and we're real good at, compartmentalizing, and turning things off, emotions off. But we're kind of like these walking heads, not connected to our life sometimes. And this is probably for any busy professional woman who has to work her butt off, in her field. And physicians are who I know the best, but there's not a lot of help or support for physicians. So I'm out to change the conversation to a more healthy conversation and taking care of our physicians in training. They have to deal with so much, right now. And just being a support and creating networks.
That's fascinating to me, because when you said that, I realized how much we rely on our primary care physicians, our OBGYNs, like anyone in the medical field that we go to for support, especially when we're dealing with some serious illnesses. The emotional charge that usually comes with any physical ailment that they also have to somehow deal with. And like you said, it sounds like all the training that's provided for physicians, so much is around the technique and the skill set of healing whatever that injury or that disease, or knowing those procedures. How then are they able to balance their own emotions? Obviously, being human beings themselves, they will have some sort of feeling or emotion about what's happening, or their own lives, or things are taking place behind the scenes, but then expected to show up with a client day after day after day at the top of their game.
Right.
And so can you tell us, just to bring this to life a little bit, give us some examples of when you were practicing, what kind of things were you dealing with, and how did that play out in your career?
Oh, Lordy, which part do you want to hear about?
We want the juicy parts.
The juicy part?
I watch Grey's Anatomy, so I know
that. Well, I can't watch Grey's Anatomy. I get too nervous. So as an OBGYN, in training and in school, I also had 4 children, and I married another OBGYN. And so life was a lot about doing one or the other of those things. You're either at the office or delivering a baby, or you're parenting. And there wasn't really time for us. And so trying to just reduce my hours didn't work. But what did work was, I think, the connection I felt to my community. I just wish I would have had the support at the time.
What kind of support did you feel you needed?
Well, it's kind of lonely sometimes as a doctor, especially in a smaller community, because you're expected to be, 100% all the time. Like 2:00 in the morning when somebody calls and says a condom broke, what do I do? And you're like, what? The condom broke? And, you have to be basically on call at your best, most of the time. So there's a lot of feeling like an impostor. There's a lot of perfectionism, and basically numbing out and just, being the person with the skills and the knowledge, but missing out on so much.
Wow. And so you said you were married to another OBGYN. So what were those conversations? How did you guys support each other?
Oh my, well, we ended up divorced years later. But I think I had that advantage of having somebody that really understood. And, I started to say how it can be so isolating in medicine. It's not like you can go say to somebody, I really effed up right here, and tell your colleague that comfortably. You know, you're not allowed to make mistakes. I mean, there's, it's life or death decisions sometimes. So,
Literally.
and we're not perfect. So, and we're not very good at supporting each other in those things. There's always consequences to disclosure in medicine. So there's a lot of there's a lot of physician suicide, and 400 doctors a year commit suicide. That's a whole, medical school class.
Wow.
And, it's not that they don't love their job. They probably love their job too much, So that's kind of why I do what I do, is that isolation and the consequences of, like, if you go in and see a psychiatrist, you're supposed to disclose that in all your annual, in some places, your annual privileges for hospitals and your licensure. And that has consequences, So being the person before somebody gets to that point is just so important to me.
Okay, so getting some support from a coach doesn't necessarily require them to report it.
Right.
Ah, I got it. Okay. Well, that's really interesting. I want to go back to something you said. The idea that 400 doctors are committing suicide in the US. That seems strange to me. And I don't know if it's something that's been talked about tons, but tell us a little bit more about what is this idea? Why are there so many? And what are they committing suicide over, you think?
Well, you hear about burnout, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, all areas have burnout. But for instance, in my training, when I had my third baby, I had to stop and think. I was expected to do 120 hours of work call to make up, that was a week, 120 hours a week to make up for when I'd be gone. Like, it's exhausting, and it's not a kind system sometimes, I hope it's starting to change, but you're told all the time, what you did wrong so that you can correct it, right? But there's also times when it's really kind of humiliating, or somebody's humiliated, or it's just like, I just can't take this anymore. I can't, people may be traumatized by certain things that have happened with patients, or they might be sued. That's really traumatizing. And like, there's no place to take that, because there's consequences to speaking up, and you're so used to being perfect.
Wow. So what is it like when other doctors get together? I get that there's some confidentiality, obviously, that needs to be maintained. It sounds like also any type of admission to any governing body could have an impact on someone's license or the record that they now have to carry. Right. So what is the social environment like among other physicians that might be able to provide that kind of support?
Yeah, I mean, the conversation is changing in training, thank goodness. So, it's what helps this the most is having a peer group that will listen to you. Well, it's not like, most of the time when doctors get together, they're discussing cases and it's for education, but more of like a regular support group. Like, I had a shitty day today,
We'll bleep that out and edit.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
I started to say it. Can you tell? I started to say it. Oh no.
I think you bleeped yourself. That's good.
Oh no. I always say I go around collecting friends that like the F word.
Continue.
Where was I?
You were talking about your meeting as a peer group, just being able to say that they had a terrible day. So
the way that we're getting at addressing burnout and physician suicide is by basically coming together as a community and providing tools for the physician. And it's very important that, our system just doesn't work for physicians right now, a lot of them. So there's some, electronic medical records. You sit there at a computer and it takes you just as long to do your paperwork or maybe longer than seeing the patient. So, yeah, for all those reasons, and it's not like get together and bitch about things. It's like get together and support each other. What can I do to support you? You know, what I hear you saying is, you know, and I know you're committed to this, and how can I support you? That kind of openness.
Yeah. When have you received that type of support yourself?
Well, I didn't until just recently, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And how did you tell us about how you came across the support that you found? Oh, why didn't I have this before? Like what happened? What was the conversation or what was the need?
Well, you know, I always kind of practice outside the box, you know. No. You know, like referring patients to naturopaths and believing in energy healing and the power of touch. And so I've always found my communities elsewhere outside of medicine. But I finally found a community, and these are physicians that have been through, some of them, a lot of them, through some trauma and are kind of leaving medicine to do their own little practice. And there's a woman named Dr. Pamela Weibel who's taken on this suicide issue for us. So a lot of these people have been previously suicidal, which I have been. And they say that up to like 40% of medical students think about
suicidal thoughts. Really?
Yeah, once in a while. So I found, where I met these people, it was really weird. I'm being really weird. We met at a spa that's called Brighton Bush, and it's out on the West Coast in Oregon. And it's a place where, you know, like you soak in natural hot springs, and like clothing is optional and nobody wears clothing. So here you are sitting in a hot tub with colleagues, all naked, and like we're used to naked bodies, right?
Yeah.
We're doctors. We see naked bodies all the time, but we don't relate to each other as human. That's what I got out of that, was like, oh my God, we relate to each other kind of like objects almost, you know, all business. So to like ground back into your body was, and meet somebody was, I don't know that I want to continue doing that, but it was just really showed me how unconnected we are, even to ourselves, you know, our own bodies.
That is a very interesting example, because I don't think I would have ever thought of it that way. You mentioned earlier that you kind of relate to each other as these heads, right?
Yeah,
you have heads filled with skill and information, and you're talking about cases, but really the humanity is missing, and that's literally the crisis that you're seeing in medicine, is that all of the suicide attempts or that rate of suicide that is contributed by the fact that people maybe don't feel that their humanity is even seen, heard.
Right.
Wow.
So, I mean, not everybody's like this, but I think it's also when you're in a busy practice or you're in your training, you know, like I said, you are walking heads. You forget your body. You learn how to not pee, you know, not.
Did you say not pee?
Yeah. Not urinate. I mean, you learn how to control
just hold it
because you don't have time, you know. So you're constantly going, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time to take care of my body, you know, or feeling guilty that you took the time either from your children or your patients because they're supposed to be above you, you know. So there's this whole self-guilt thing that can go on too, and you just learn like my body, I'll take care of it later.
My goodness.
Yeah.
You know, yes, having me see people in the medical profession, and I imagine not only physicians, but nurses probably have something similar.
Yeah, they do.
EMTs. Wow. So talk a little bit about how you're supporting them. Like, what are the conversations you're having with individuals that are when you're trying to bring more humanity into the medical field? What do you talk about?
Well, first of all, it's like meet them where they are. You know, and sometimes, and I know you know this from doing work with people, if you pull one thread from, you know, there's this fear of falling apart.
Mm.
So you have to meet clients where they are and find out, what's not working in their life, just regular coaching. But also, really, it's just really listening to the physicians as humans and their heartbreaks and, the things they've stuffed down, and bringing awareness to this slowly, and, what's getting in the way. It's usually something unprocessed or a thought that I'm not good enough. That's pounded into you a lot. So it's just confronting those things gently and just being there to listen. It's kind of like a coach shouldn't do that much except ask questions. And when you can provide that kind of listening where they feel seen, and you can start networking with other physicians and forming communities, then that's just so healing.
I remember reading a book. Have you heard of Atul Gawande? He has a New York best-selling book called Being Mortal.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic book, by the way.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
his writing. But he also has a TED Talk, and he talks about the power of coaching.
Yeah.
Specifically, though, I think if I'm not mistaken, the coaching was around being more efficient in the operating room, for example, like finding efficient systems. But I want to just distinguish that what you're talking about is not about how to be a better technician, right? You're really talking about being a better human and kind of rounding out the type of training and support that people in the medical field have. So you mentioned listening being a big part of that, how you listen to someone and making sure that they're understanding and connecting to that deeper part of themselves. What have you seen be the impact when you, either in the coaching that you received or in the coaching that you provide for others?
I think the impact has been they always know I've got their back, because sometimes you don't want to take the stuff home either. So they know somebody has their back and can be there to the listening. But the impact is that those things that have been stuffed down so long they get complete. They get looked at and like, oh, I can let go of this. We all have baggage, right?
Yeah.
It's just that they haven't really had the time to work on getting rid of the baggage.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of a little bit of that. And there's also the performance stuff. I mean, I love to work with people who are, like you do, up to something.
Yeah.
So there may be something that, they want to achieve, or a new business, or, be better in their practice or whatever. And that's great. And doing the work as you go along, the deep inner work. I think for women, we're just so hard on ourselves. You feel guilty as a parent because you're doctoring too much. Then you feel guilty as a doctor because you've got kids, and your own biology.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said earlier. You mentioned secondary trauma, and I'm not sure I understand what that means. Can you explain that and what impact that has?
Well, secondary trauma is like you observe trauma. It's not your trauma, but you can imagine the emergency room. There's plenty of TV shows, but when it's real life and real people, or you lose a patient. So there's observing the trauma that's going on, there's horrific situations. And then there's the trauma of not being able to help somebody. And there's, we're traumatized sometimes from our training. Which is an interesting phenomenon that hopefully we're changing.
What do you mean traumatized by the training?
Oh, when you're doing the Socratic method, there may be rounds going on, like there's 8 of us and an attending, and some of the attendings will actually try to humiliate, or you feel humiliation because you feel that judgment if you don't know the answer. But that's like regular school is, Dr. Alley-Hay, tell me all about this, blockage in her colon. What can you tell me? What leads to that? And being that's part of our training, which you want us well trained. But that also can sometimes, for some people who are like me, more heart-centered and more energetic, that can be really damaging, you know.
Got it. So what you're basically pointing to is that not only are physicians or people in the medical field seeing the traumatic instances that come in through their clinic or through their hospital, but also, you know, themselves experiencing it either because they've been humiliated by peers, colleagues, or dealing with something that they found really hit close to home, but not really having anyone or any place to discharge some of the anxiety or some of the fear or some of the
Right.
the hurt, it sounds
Yeah.
like.
So you
Wow,
just
that's
keep
a
going.
lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. It is a lot. And it's not going to change. I mean, I don't want to get into talking about healthcare because I got a lot to say about that, lots of opinions, but
Sure.
the way it is currently in our system, there's just got to be change, you know? There's got to be like learning self-compassion, self-care first. Administrators willing to look at, you know, take care of their physicians, you know, like reasonable hours, you know, treating them with respect, autonomy in making decisions about your patients. You know, all of those things are threatened right now.
Wow.
And so the system isn't working very well, is what, and a lot of people are leaving medicine. I mean, not everybody, because some people just love their practice, but it's getting kind of more and more fragmented because it's, you know, like, I don't know how long you get to spend with your doctor, but if you go to an orthopedist, it may be, you know, 5 minutes, but they have all these other people they have to see.
That's so true. And it's so interesting you mentioned that because, you know, the times when I have gone to spend time with a doctor, one of the things that I expect the most, and that's what makes or breaks my relationship with them, is how present they are,
Yeah.
how much they listen, how much compassion they demonstrate. But what you're pointing to is that the system is really rigged against that.
Absolutely.
Just internally, they just don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the time, they don't have the energy, they don't have the self-care. They don't, none of those things are really part of the system. Therefore, man, I'm lucky the doctors that I had it, whatever, heart-centered, perhaps, like you said, they felt heart-centered enough to spend that extra time with me, answering questions, checking in on how it's doing. But that, you're right, that's rare. It's rare, and it takes work to find that. Man, I think even, you know, what I want to point to is even those that might be listening or watching that are not in the medical profession. If you do have someone that you talk to that you see might need this type of support, I definitely want to make sure that they know they should send this video or send this podcast to them, because I think what you're pointing to is how to make them more whole, more grounded.
And you're not alone is my big, like, convincing people they're not alone and they're good enough. Not convincing them, but having them see that, you know, is the work.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm gonna take a sharp left turn here
Okay, great.
because I don't know left, but it doesn't have to be left. It could be right.
It could be up. It could be down.
Because I see that you have a Ruth Bader Ginsburg portrait in the background, but I want to bring Ruth into the conversation.
Okay.
So,
I could go get her.
Go get Ruth. Let's bring Ruth into this.
Oh my God, this woman. You asked me why I have a Ruth Bader Ginsburg picture.
We want to know, why is Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the room?
Her support for women's health and women's choices in the Supreme Court is just amazing. And the fact that she's like this little person that goes up and treats, you know, speaks truth to power, you know, in a time, she started in a time where that wasn't necessarily very popular. And she just keeps going. You know, this lady just keeps going. So it's kind of like, if Ruth can do that, I can do my little, you know, I can do my little thing in my little corner in my little office. So, yeah. So I really think a lot of her and what she's done to advance women's rights.
Oh, fantastic. And I know you've also over the years have taken your influence and your knowledge to other parts of the world. Can you share a little bit about what you've been doing and the impact?
So I just kind of like got into going to India, the northern part, to a Tibetan Buddhist community, that the Dalai Lama had built a facility, like a clinic, hospital, and wanted Western medicine to come into the valley. And this valley is like, I don't know, the road is closed off 8 months of the year. So, I mean,
snow.
and yeah, snow and the mountain passes. And so it's kind of like bring in the Western medicine and work with the Amchis, who are the Tibetan medicine people, and, work together and learn from each other and, figure out what resources are needed for that valley, that community. So it was kind of a daunting task. Somebody asked me, a friend from Montana where I practiced for several years, just said, hey, we need somebody to do cervical cancer screening. Would you like to come? And I was like, sure, So, I mean, the willingness to say yes. And then I said, oh, I better check with my husband to make sure, So I've been doing that now. This will be the 5th year this summer. Wow. And I get so much more out of it, than I've given. It feels like.
What do you get out of it?
Oh, when you take yourself out of your comforts at home, and first of all, you fly to India, and there's so much poverty in India and human suffering that you see. And then going into, the Ladakhi area, which is Tibetan Buddhist. There's the army, Pakistan's over here in northern India, and China's over here, So they're surrounded in that area by, what do you want to say, not friendly entities. And so you see the army there, like they need to have an army in these remote places. And it's just like, I don't know, you go through that and then you get there and the people are so happy. I mean, I know people hear this, but they are just so happy. And it's all a philosophy of us, like there is no separation. Like this is how they live. And, my whole village is my family. You're my family, and let me think of those others before I think of myself. And, they're living in places that may have dirt floors or may have carpets on the floor. They don't have, and we didn't, modern plumbing. Some places don't have electricity, or the electricity may come on at 7 p.m. Internet has been like, maybe not, depending on the year, so, I mean, and it's in a situation where the modern world is coming to that area. So the Dalai Lama calls it the last, truly Tibetan Buddhist enclave. So,
wow,
it's just amazing.
So when you go, you're going there to do cervical cancer screenings. That's the role that you play.
It's changed, and I brought other people in, as a team. We've gotten bigger, and so I do a lot of teaching, which I love. This last year, there was a gynecologist that was ready to jump in and do the women's clinic, and I could go off and, do teaching. There's not the education either of, sexual education. And so I have gotten into more of the teaching part, and teaching the nurses that are now, it's only been like probably one generation that's been schooled outside of the valley.
Wow. What do you teach? What do you teach?
Oh, I teach like the nurses that are, going to be there the whole time. The younger people that are studying nursing or medicine, we're hoping like more, so teaching what it is I know to, and learning what they know is just really fascinating. But there's a lot of like holes in the education. And they're just so anxious to learn, so.
And so how long do you spend there? You said this is the 5th year that you've gone. How much time do you spend?
Usually about a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it takes us a long time to just get there. We usually have the clinic open 3 weeks,
Okay.
Yeah.
So it takes like a week just to get set up and everything.
Well, in altitude. No, once we get to Zanskar, which is like this 2-day trip that's a 4-wheel drive through the Himalaya mountains. Like you're bouncing the whole time in a car that's you got 7 people in. I mean, it's like there's so many lessons there. Just the ride itself. But what was I saying?
Good thing that you've learned how to hold your bladder.
Yeah, that's
from your doctor training comes in real handy when you're bouncing around the Himalayas.
Yeah, I don't know how I've been lucky. Never. I mean, yeah, and there's not woods there either. The Himalayas, you're up in the rocks, right?
Yikes.
And there's all kinds of things you learn about not being attached, you know, because you're not in charge, you know, not being attached to an outcome, like giving things up, just like really zen.
Give us an example of a lesson that you've learned that's really impacted you.
Well, you know, I used to think I was afraid of crowds, right?
Of crowds, like people?
And being people in my personal space. Okay, so you get in a car with 6 other people and you bounce around on this road for 2 days, 2 long days, at an altitude where it's hard to even think. And you just do it because you're up to something. And so just bringing like, oh, I just have to like personal space. I made that up. You know, I totally made that up. So I'm just going to be like, I'm just connected to everybody, you know? So each time I do a trip, I take on something new. But really, the whole, I can remember a friend of mine, she's an occupational therapist, and she turned to me, and I think she was being affected by the altitude too. And she turned to me and cussed me out and said, "You did not tell me it was this bad." I was like, you know, I was laughing on the inside because I knew where she'd be when she left.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, sometimes putting yourself in those situations, first of all, I got to be with people one-on-one, you know, like why I'm a healer. And then, you know, building a team, there's all kinds of things that it makes it just really, I think a lot of us, when we get out of ourselves, that's when we find happiness.
Absolutely. I really like something that you said, that it sounds like you got really committed. You got so clear on what your commitment was to the women that you were teaching, to the education that you were bringing to an area that really needed it, that the discomfort, the inconvenience just didn't even matter after a while, right? That you could really just put that to the side and know that this is just, you know, a small price to pay. Yeah. The comfort was a small price to pay for this huge commitment that you had to bring into the world.
Yeah. But it's also being immersed in another culture is really cool. And
say more about that.
You come home and it's like, oh my God, I have a hot shower. I don't have to bathe from a bucket, you know? Oh my God, I can flush the toilet. Oh my God, you know? So that's kind of where I learned a lot. I mean, gratitude. I mean, it's like, we don't think, I mean, we consciously, that's a conversation right now, gratitude. And there's a difference in living it always and remembering, you know, like be immersed in such a loving and peaceful, happy and fun people, and making a difference for their lives. It's just like, okay, I'll put up with this, you know? Yeah, because I get so much more, like I said. They're kind of like family now. You know?
You said that every time you go, you take on something new. So what is that? What is the thing that you're taking on? When do you go again?
It'll be probably June or July, depending on if the Dalai Lama's coming.
Oh, so, nice.
Yeah.
So what do you take on anew each time you go? And what's the next thing you're going to take on when you go back?
Oh, I haven't thought about it. I think I put it out of my mind because you know, every year I'm like, am I really going to go? Because the altitude. I don't know what I'll take on. Perhaps you know what I've taken on for 2020? And I'd be interested to know what you've taken on.
Oh, okay.
I've taken on just like lightness, you know, like lightness of being rather than being so significant. I look back on 2019 and it's like, oh, I was so significant that, so fun. I'll probably take on some kind of lightness, like being the person that's, supporting people and bringing lightness to our crazy situations we get into.
I love that. Taking on lightness.
Yeah.
Yes.
What are you taking on this year?
What am I taking on this year? I think I take it on every year. It feels like it's like a peeling of an onion.
Yes.
One of the things is I found this really cool quote about ambition, and here I'll read it to you. This is what I'm taking on because I put it on as the wallpaper on my phone. Yes, because I feel like I like being up to something, right? I like the idea of finding something new to commit to, something exciting, different that really stretches me. And this is kind of like a prayer for ambition, I guess you could say. And it says, may I offer all my deepest longings to love itself and invite a divine plan beyond the mind's imagining. Please use me for the highest good.
That's
so
beautiful.
What that means to me is I don't have to craft. I don't have to create. I don't have to devise or design the outcome that I want, the process, the people, the opportunities. My job is to be led to whatever the next thing is. So what I find myself over the years, because I think my life lesson in this incarnation has been releasing control.
That's a good one.
Control in a lot of different ways. I think as I get older and I start to see the benefit of not holding on so tightly to something I think I should or shouldn't or how it should be, that I love surprises. I really do. And so I'm enjoying more surprises.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's a lightness to that too,
Yeah, like there is. There is.
Yeah. And even, today, that's when we talked about this yesterday, I do this podcast every week on Tuesdays. That's the day that I do it. And you and I talked and you shared with me kind of your intention. There's some things that you have coming up in your life, things that you're committed to. You thought this would be great practice, good opportunity. I was like, oh, what a great message. I don't want to put it off too long.
Yeah.
But I'm booked through April at this point, and I'm like, I can't get you in until April, Robyn. But then you told me about some of the circumstances, and I'm like, wait, Valerie, you said you're going to be guided, right? So part of being guided is you get to say yes to some things that are not on the plan or not in the schedule.
Yeah.
So this is how I practice what I have put as a wallpaper on my phone.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's in common here is just being open and being connected to your source, your higher power, whatever that is, your spiritual life. Like being connected to that makes life so much easier because then it's not you having to control things or put out the energy. It's like channeling it. Anyway, I'm into Reiki too. I'm into so many things, Valerie.
But I love what you're doing because I think, what I also heard, and this is a thread that I kind of tied with what you were sharing about the physician support you want to provide, right? You want to really delve into how to create an environment where people in the medical field are heard, they feel listened, they're considered, their humanity is brought into their work. And then you also said now you're also connected to this community in the Himalayas where everybody there feels connected, that their community and their family is their community that you said. And you mentioned that one of the biggest challenges in the medical profession here is the loneliness epidemic.
Yeah.
And so I find it the juxtaposition of you wanting to deal with loneliness and then also being in a community where you soak up the family and the community, right? The family aspect of not being alone, not being one, but being multiple, and bringing those two together. I think that's phenomenal.
Yes. I mean,
wow.
They're over there. I know they pray for all sentient beings, but where else in the world are people 24 hours a day, doing their mantras and praying for peace for the whole world? Like that's their life. And to bring it here, I also want to bring people's awareness to there. So it's just worked out that I've been able to heal so much, as a healer, reclaim myself as a healer, give up a lot of things like control, like you said.
Yeah.
You can't control things. Or fixing things. That's another topic.
Yes. Controlling things, fixing people. That was
Yeah.
really the that was my combination.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me help you.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's work on you.
Exactly.
Yes. So I apologize to anybody who felt that kind of energy. I was going to fix you. Was obviously not in my right mind. But yeah, I do think what you're doing is also providing some resources and tools that are necessary. So tell us, how can people get a hold of you? Like if someone hears that, hey, you know what, I could use someone to talk to. I could use a coach in my life, and especially those that are in the medical profession. What do they do? How do they connect with you? Or what resources do you have?
Well, I have a website. I'm on social media. It's Dr. Robyn AlleyHay. Kind of all over the place there. And I have a website. It's dralley-hay.com, dralleyhay.com. And then there's links, there to other projects I'm working on.
Is there a project that you really want to?
I'm finding my friends, my physician coach friends. I mean, it's really, fabulous. So we're like starting to collaborate and have fun. So, and bring community. That's our thing. We want to bring community.
I love it.
Yeah.
You mentioned, is there a course that you're teaching or course you're taking? There's some sort of course that you mentioned recently.
Yeah, I have, there's 3 of us that are doing a course, like mini courses in a row for February, March and April. And, my part of it is going to be the mindfulness in March. It's also like self-coaching and dealing with, imposter syndrome. And then some other things in accomplishment, performance. So those are really wonderful ladies to work with. And then I'm doing my own course in March. And it's called Shame Reframe. So yeah, we didn't even talk about shame.
Well, we have some time. Let's talk about shame.
Yeah. So that'll be like a every other week kind of Zoom, getting together that way. That just helps so much that you can connect with somebody across the country and have that in common.
Yeah. Why shame?
Well, when most of us are going around like pretending we're okay, we have a public facade. Sometimes we're doing things to please others. Women are really good at that. And the experience of your authentic self isn't necessarily there because, perhaps you were taught you weren't good enough, but like all of us kind of have that there. And some of us are more sensitive to, shame and getting down on yourself than other people. And so it's just like learning to learn your triggers. And then, what do I need to do in this moment to deal with my triggers, and stepping into like mindful authenticness, being authentic, like your pimples or your warts and all, like the world needs you as the authentic person, not the person that has to look a certain way or say a certain thing. So I'm really excited about that.
So what you're saying is that what you're really wanting to tackle, or what you want to bring out into the open, is that the things that people hide about themselves, things that people feel unworthy, maybe perhaps there's some story or some inner chatter that's telling that person that they're not good enough, that they're not smart enough, that they are somehow defective because of what they've experienced or whatever that is. Those things that we can sometimes push down or hide or don't necessarily talk about in the open. What you want to do is bring it out into the light. What is the impact of doing that?
Well, I mean, and there's also in that vein, there's failures and mistakes you've made that you think, that stick there. And the impact is a whole lot of freedom. And the impact is being a better healer, a better doctor, a better executive, being a better mother, because you have freed up so much space to just be.
Yeah.
And that's really hard for a lot of people to just be. They should come with me to India and we'll just, you know,
Just see how
sit
it
in a
is.
monastery and just be.
I'm gonna have to take you up on that. You know,
Yeah.
you make a good point, because I don't think people always realize the weight that the psychic baggage that is carried. I remember, what, 15 years ago now, I'm divorced. I've been divorced about 15 years, but the first, I would say, 6 months or so, when I was having some challenges with my ex-husband, I didn't share with anybody.
Yeah.
I don't even think my parents really knew how miserable or how upset or how sad that whole experience was. And I remember I would go to church every Sunday and just, put on the strong, Valerie capable, got it together attitude. And there was a point where my ex and I were separated. Like, he'd moved out of the apartment. We'd had this, a lot of just argument, and there's all this conflict, but I didn't share with anybody. And I remember just kind of being like, oh, so stressed out about it. But I went to church and I'm like, I'm just going to go do my little translation, because I was an interpreter there at the time. And some really wonderful friends came up to me, and they knew my ex-husband. I mean, they knew at the time was my husband, and they're like, hey, so how's everything going? How's Yvonne? We hadn't seen him in a while. What's going on? We miss you guys. And I was like, and I had a choice at that moment.
Right.
And I took the choice to say, he and I are separated. And I just remember, like, this huge boulder rolling off my shoulder. There was this wave of relief. And all they said was, okay, are you okay? Do you need anything? Do you want to talk? There was no judgment. There was no criticism. And I think for the longest time, I felt that I had to carry my problems and burdens myself, because other people couldn't handle it, or I would be judged. And Valerie's got everything so together. But that was a huge lesson for me, and ever since then, I don't tell everybody everything, but I know I have a community of people. My family always knows. They probably know too much. They're like, okay, again, Valerie, you tell me too much, but they always know. And I have a wonderful group of friends and community. So what I hear you talking about is so essential for human healing. There's absolutely no way that we can heal when we're carrying the weight that of our mistakes, like you said. Even mistakes. I mean, some people are carrying mistakes that they made in elementary school. They're carrying mistakes of things that were put upon them by adults who didn't know better. So love the work that you're doing, Robyn. I'm so grateful that you're in the world and that you found a path that will help those who heal themselves.
That's
phenomenal. Any final thoughts before we close today?
I just wanted to read something.
Yes, let's read.
Marianne Williamson, our
Love
deepest
her.
fear. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people the permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So I'm a big proponent of doing the work.
Yes. And that's exactly what there is to do. Yeah. For those of you who like that poem, that quote is from her book, A Return to Love, Marianne Williamson. And I'll share your link, Robyn, on the show notes so people know how to get a hold of you. Anything that you'd like to share with me about the coursework, I'll add that in there as well. So those of you watching it, make sure you subscribe to timetocomealive.com so that you get this in your inbox and you know exactly what's going on. Robyn, I am so grateful to have you in this world, in this lifetime, really out there creating something for people who are there to serve others. And I hear your service now is to create the opportunity for people to serve others whole, complete, and perfect.
Yes, absolutely.
Phenomenal. Good work. Thank you so much for being with
Yes,
us
thanks for
today.
being my friend.
Of course. This is that's what friends are for.
Music next time.
Hey,
We'll dance.
we'll have some Casey Musgrave or something.
Yeah, there you go.
So good. Thank you so much for being with us. Those of you who are listening, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Time to Come Alive. Looking forward to our next episode. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everybody. Bye.